My name is Nora Caldwell, and I was 32 the year I learned what a manila folder could do to a family. My grandmother, Lorraine, turned 79 on a Saturday in October. She baked her own cake, vanilla with buttercream roses, her specialty since before I was born. She set the table for 8. Paper napkins, the good plates, dried hydrangeas from her garden. Nobody came. My parents were skiing in Aspen. My brother sent a text at 4:15, "Happy birthday, Gran." Skiing is amazing. My father didn't text at all. My mother posted a ski goggles selfie to her church group chat with the word, #blessed. I drove 3 hours from Hartford after my shift and found her sitting alone in the kitchen. The candles had melted down into the frosting. The ice cream had gone soft. She looked at me like she wasn't sure I was real. I cut her a slice. I sang. The next day, while I was helping her clean the house, 2 strangers knocked on her door. They handed me a folder, sealed, thick, and signed in my grandmother's own handwriting. What happened after that ended my family as I knew it. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories, where ordinary people set quiet boundaries that change everything, and dignity always gets the last word. If stories about standing up for someone who can't stand up for themselves hit close to home, drop a comment and subscribe. That evening stays pressed into me like a thumbprint in wet clay. I'd left Hartford at 5, still in my work flats, a gas station bouquet resting on the passenger seat. 3 hours on I-95, then the back roads through Briarwood, where the oaks arch over the pavement like a cathedral ceiling. I pulled into her gravel driveway at 8:12. The porch light was on. Every other window was dark. Inside, the kitchen table told the whole story. 8 place settings. A centerpiece of dried hydrangeas she'd arranged that morning. The cake sat in the middle. Vanilla buttercream roses. 79 spelled out in pink gel. The candles had burned down to waxy nubs stuck in the frosting. A gallon of Neapolitan had sweated through its carton onto the tablecloth. She was sitting at the head of the table in her lavender cardigan, hands folded around a glass of water. Nora. She smiled, then frowned. Is it Tuesday? It's Saturday, Gran. Your birthday. Oh. She touched the cake. I thought I was making this for the church bake sale. I set the flowers in a mason jar and fixed her a plate. We ate cake with our hands because neither of us felt like washing forks. I sang happy birthday twice, because halfway through the first time, she asked me to start over. At 10, I carried her to bed. She weighed nothing. Her wrist was the width of a paper towel roll. As I pulled the quilt to her chin, she grabbed my hand. Her eyes went sharp, focused, like a radio catching a signal through static. They think I don't notice, she whispered. I waited for more, but she was already asleep. I should tell you who I am in this family. The Caldwells of Briarwood are a particular kind of Connecticut comfortable. My father, Gregory, managed regional accounts for an insurance brokerage until he could golf 3 times a week and call it consulting. My mother, Diane, organized charity galas and sat on the library board. My brother, Aaron, ran a small construction development firm, Aaron Caldwell Properties, and owned a German sedan that cost more than my annual salary. Then there was me. The paralegal. I worked at a 4-person elder law firm in Hartford. Wills, trusts, guardianship filings. I earned $47,000 a year and studied for the bar at night. My family called me the paperwork one. At holiday dinners, Diane would tilt her head and say, Nora is still doing her little legal assistant thing. Like I was selling friendship bracelets at a farmer's market. I didn't argue. I read fine print. But this house was mine in every way that mattered, and no way that counted. I took my first steps on that kitchen linoleum. Lorraine taught me to read a lease on the back porch when I was 19, her reading glasses perched on her nose, a red pen between her teeth. She co-signed my first apartment because my parents wouldn't. I slept in the guest room that night and lay awake tracing the ceiling crack I'd traced since I was 6. Around midnight, I got up for water. On the hallway shelf, behind a framed photo of the family, I found a business card. Brenda Voss. Voss and Dean Realty. With a handwritten note on the back, comp value $680,000. Quick close possible. I put the card back. My hands were steady, but my stomach wasn't. Sunday morning, I scrubbed the kitchen while Lorraine dozed in her recliner. The cake went into Tupperware. The melted candles went into the trash. I wiped buttercream off the good plates and stacked them in the cabinet, where they'd sit until whoever came to clear out the house someday. That thought landed wrong. I shoved it aside. At 10:15, someone knocked. 2 people stood on the porch. The woman was about 60. Silver bob, wool coat, leather briefcase. Professional. The man beside her was younger, maybe 40, carrying a notary seal in a zippered pouch. Nora Caldwell? The woman asked. Yes. My name is Ruth Adler. This is my colleague, Nathan Pruitt. Your grandmother retained my firm 14 months ago. She held out a manila folder. Thick. Sealed with a wax paper flap. My grandmother's name printed on the tab in blue ink. She asked us to deliver this to you, Ruth said. Personally. When the time came. When the time came for what? Ruth glanced at the recliner through the screen door. Her expression softened by a fraction of a degree. Come to my office when you're ready. Here's my card. She pressed it into my hand. Don't discuss this with your parents before we talk. They were in their car and pulling away before I could form a second question. I stood on the porch holding the folder. It was heavier than it looked. Maybe 40 pages. The seal had been signed across the flap in Lorraine's handwriting, looping and deliberate, the way she signed birthday cards and Christmas checks. My phone buzzed. A text from Diane, who is at the door. Don't sign anything, Nora. I turned the phone face down and brought the folder inside. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where the birthday cake had sat untouched the night before, and ran my finger along the sealed flap. Lorraine's signature crossed the seal. I recognized every curve. The capital L with its exaggerated tail, the double loop on the lowercase r. This wasn't a shaky mark. This was written by a woman who knew exactly what she was putting her name on. I broke the seal. Inside was a stack of legal documents I immediately recognized from work. A recorded deed. A trust instrument. A durable power of attorney. Notarized witness pages. A physician's letter on medical letterhead, dated 14 months ago. Clipped to the front was a handwritten note on Lorraine's personal stationery. Cream paper, blue ink, the same deliberate script. Nora, when they come for the house, open this. Everything you need is here. I love you. I'm sorry it has to be you. I read the note 3 times. Each time, the words when they come for the house landed harder. Not if. When. She'd known. 14 months ago, before the forgetting got bad. Before she started calling me by my mother's name, before the wandering, and the stove left on, and the day she got lost driving to the post office 2 blocks away. She'd known someone would come for the house. She'd prepared. I closed the folder and pressed my palm flat on top of it. Through the doorway, I could hear Lorraine snoring lightly in her recliner, a crossword puzzle slipping off her lap. She'd hired a lawyer. She'd signed documents. She'd left me instructions. That note didn't let me sleep that night. I lay in the guest room with the folder on the nightstand, watching the ceiling, listening to the house breathe. Monday morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Something in me said to stay. I found it while taking out the recycling. A lockbox. A realtor's combination lockbox clamped to the gas meter behind the hydrangea bushes, tucked just out of sight from the front walk. I knew what it was immediately. I'd seen them on every listing in Briarwood. Somebody had been showing this house. I went back inside and opened Lorraine's mail pile. 3 weeks of unsorted envelopes on the hallway table. Buried between a phone bill and a coupon flyer, I found a listing sheet. Off market. Printed on Voss and Dean Realty letterhead. The same Brenda Voss from the business card. For bedrooms, 2.5 baths, original hardwood, quarter-acre lot. Listed at $680,000, $50,000 under the most recent comp in the neighborhood. In the kitchen junk drawer, I found the worst of it. A purchase agreement. And signed, but filled in. Buyer, Stonewall Capital Group, LLC. Cash offer. 30-day close. The seller's signature line was left blank, but someone had penciled L. Caldwell in block letters below it, like a rehearsal. The listing agent was Brenda Voss. The contact on the buyer's side was a name I didn't recognize. But the seller's representative listed on the agreement? It was Aaron Caldwell. My brother. I sat on the kitchen floor and spread the pages around me like a paper mosaic. The lock. The listing sheet. The purchase agreement. Brenda's card. A sticky note in Diane's handwriting that read, "Closing target, November 15th. That was 3 weeks away. I picked up the folder from the nightstand, and this time, I opened it to the first page of the trust instrument. I read every word. I called my mother at 6 o'clock that evening. "Oh, Nora." Diane's voice had that specific warmth. The one she used on parish volunteers and restaurant hostesses. Bright, managing. "How's Gran doing?" "We had the most wonderful time in Aspen. The snow was just divine. There's a lockbox on her gas meter." Silence. 2 seconds. 3. "Sweetheart, that's being handled. Dad and Aaron have been working with a lovely agent to find a suitable transition plan for your grandmother. You know she can't keep up this big house on her own. There's a purchase agreement in her kitchen drawer." Nora. The warmth dropped 1 register. "This is a family decision between your father, your brother, and me. We've been managing Gran's affairs for months. You don't need to worry about the details. She doesn't know the house is being sold, does she? She knows what she needs to know." Diane paused. I could hear the clink of a wineglass over the line. Aaron's company is in a difficult stretch. The house can fund a proper care facility for Gran and help your brother through a rough patch. It's the responsible thing. It's her house, Mom. Nora. The register dropped again. All the way to the basement. Cold. Final. Your grandmother has dementia. She leaves the stove on. She got lost driving to the post office. She is not the person who should be making decisions about a $680,000 asset. Then she said it. She won't remember the house by Christmas. The line hummed between us. Then it's a good thing I remember, I said. I hung up. I picked up the manila folder and Ruth Adler's business card. I held them side by side under the kitchen light. Tomorrow, I would drive to Hartford. Tonight, I had reading to do. Ruth Adler's office was on the second floor of a converted brownstone on Asylum Avenue. The waiting room had faded oriental rugs, framed diplomas from Yukon Law, and a small brass sign that read, Adler and Associates, Elder Law and Estate Planning. I'd called at 7:30 that morning. Her receptionist put me through in under a minute, which, if you know anything about law offices, tells you they were expecting the call. Ms. Caldwell. Ruth's voice was the same measured calm from the porch. I'm glad you reached out. Can you come in today? I drove the 3 hours again. Ruth met me in a conference room with a pot of Earl Grey and a box of tissues she placed exactly between us on the table, without comment. Your grandmother came to me 14 months ago, she began. Early August of last year. She'd had an episode. Got disoriented driving, ended up 2 towns over, couldn't remember how to get home. A neighbor brought her back. She called me the next morning. She already knew you. She knew my firm. Her friend Dorothy had used us for a trust. Your grandmother came in alone. She was sharp, focused. Ruth paused. Scared. Of what? Of exactly what's happening now. Ruth folded her hands. She told me, my son will do whatever Diane tells him, and Diane will sell the house the minute I can't stop her. She wanted to stop it before she couldn't. I put my tea down. She chose you, Ms. Caldwell. Specifically. She said, you were the only one who would fight for the house because you were the only one who understood what it meant. Ruth opened her own copy of the folder. Your grandmother prepared for this. Let me show you how. Ruth walked me through it piece by piece. 14 months ago, Lorraine had come to this office wearing pressed slacks and her pearl earrings, carrying a folder of her own. Deed to the house, tax records, her will from 1998. A list of questions she'd handwritten on yellow legal pad paper in the same looping blue ink. She was methodical, Ruth said. She told me she'd noticed the forgetting names first, then appointments, then the route to the post office. She said her doctor had used the word early stage. She said she had maybe a year, maybe 2, before the window closed. The window for what? For making legally binding decisions while she still had capacity. Ruth turned a page. She wanted 2 things. First, to protect the house. Second, to choose who would protect her when she couldn't protect herself. And she didn't choose my father. Ruth looked at me over her reading glasses. No. She did not. She said it without inflection, but the weight of it settled in my chest like a stone dropped into still water. My father was Lorraine's only child. He'd grown up in that kitchen. She'd put him through college, paid for his first suit, danced at his wedding. And when the time came to hand someone the keys to her life, she'd driven past him and gone straight to me. Because she knew. She knew Gregory would defer to Diane. She knew Diane would calculate. She knew Aaron would need a bailout. Your grandmother executed the documents on August 9th of last year, Ruth continued. Full capacity. Dr. Mercer, her neurologist, provided a written evaluation that same day, confirming she understood the nature and consequences of what she was signing. Ruth tapped the physician's letter. This is your foundation. The legal architecture was impeccably clean. I recognized every instrument from my work. Item 1, a revocable living trust. Lorraine had transferred the house, the deed, the title, everything into a trust. The Lorraine E. Caldwell Revocable Living Trust. She was the trustee while she had capacity. I was the successor trustee. If she became incapacitated, legal control of the house passed to me. Not my father. Not Aaron. Me. Item 2, a durable power of attorney. Lorraine had named me her agent for all financial and healthcare decisions. The durability clause meant it survived her incapacity. It didn't expire when she got sick. It activated. Item 3, the physician's letter. Dr. Mercer had examined Lorraine on August 9th and documented that she demonstrated full testamentary capacity. She understood what a trust was. She understood she was placing her house beyond the reach of anyone except the granddaughter she trusted. So the house isn't hers anymore, I said. Technically correct. The house belongs to the trust. Lorraine can't sell it as an individual. And under this trust structure, no one holding a personal power of attorney over Lorraine has authority over assets already transferred into the trust. Only the trustee can authorize a sale. And the trustee is me. Once Lorraine is determined to lack capacity? Yes. And based on what you've described, she left the stove on 3 times last month. She got lost 2 blocks from home. Ruth nodded. The successor trustee provisions are likely already active. Then she leaned forward. Ms. Caldwell, there's something else you should know. If your family has had your grandmother sign anything recently, a new power of attorney, a listing agreement, while she lacked capacity, those documents may not be enforceable. She let that sit. They may have had her sign something newer. I drove back to Briarwood that evening. The house was quiet. The porch light was on, same as always. And through the front window, I could see Lorraine in her recliner, television murmuring, her reading glasses folded on the armrest. I let myself in with the spare key she'd given me when I was 16. The one she'd never given my parents. Gran. She looked up for a moment. 3 seconds, maybe 4. Her eyes were absolutely clear. Not the soft confusion of most days. Not the pleasant fog. Clear like creek water over gravel. You went to see Ruth, she said. I stopped in the doorway. You remember Ruth? I remember enough. She picked up her reading glasses and turned them in her hands. I remember I was scared, and I went to a lawyer, and I told her what Diane would do. Did I get it right? I sat on the arm of the couch. You got it exactly right, Gran. Good. She put the glasses on, then took them off again, as if she'd forgotten why she'd reached for them. They've been bringing people through the house. Tuesdays, when the nurse is here. I hear the doors open and close. Strangers looking at my kitchen. I know. Your father won't look at me when he visits. He talks to the walls. She pressed her lips together. Aaron brought papers. I don't remember what I signed. I took her hand. It doesn't matter what you signed. You already took care of it. She squeezed my fingers. Her grip was thin, but deliberate. I'm not gone yet, Nora. The words hung in the kitchen air between us. Fragile and fierce. By tomorrow, she might not remember saying them, but I would. I would remember for both of us. Aaron showed up Wednesday. He didn't knock. He never knocked. Just walked in with his car keys jingling and his smile already on. The way he entered every room, like the room should be glad he'd arrived. Hey, Nor. He kissed the top of my head. He smelled like cedar cologne and the leather interior of a $50,000 SUV. Checking in on Gran. That's sweet. I'm staying for a while? Oh, yeah. He opened the fridge, helped himself to a LaCroix, and leaned against the counter like he owned the place. Taking some time off from the paralegal gig? He said paralegal the way you'd say hobby. Aaron, I know about the listing. His LaCroix paused halfway to his mouth. 1 beat. 2. Then the smile adjusted. Not gone, just reclassified. Warmth to negotiation. Look, I know it seems fast, but here's the thing. The company's in a rough patch. I've got a balloon payment coming due in 8 weeks. $740,000. If I miss it, the bank takes everything. Every project, every contract, 3 years of work, gone. So, you're selling Gran's house. I'm helping the family manage an asset that Gran can't manage herself. He set the pen down. Nora, the money solves everything. Gran gets a nice facility. Dad and Mom stop worrying. I keep my business. Everybody wins. Except Gran. Gran doesn't know what day it is. She knows people are walking through her house. Aaron's jaw tightened. He stepped closer. Don't make this difficult. We're family. Family helps family. Is that what you told her when you brought the papers? He stared at me. Then the smile came back, but harder now. Performative. It's basically sold already, Nora. The closing is set. He left his empty can on the counter and walked out without rinsing it. That night, I searched in the bottom of the hallway credenza, behind a stack of old Guideposts magazines. I found what they'd had her sign. A power of attorney, dated September 3rd, barely 2 months ago. It named Gregory Caldwell as Lorraine's agent for all financial and property decisions. Stapled to it was a listing authorization for the house, also dated September 3rd, granting Aaron Caldwell the right to act as the seller's representative. I carried both documents to the kitchen table and laid them beside the originals from Ruth's folder. The signature differences hit me before I finished unfolding the pages. Lorraine's trust documents from 14 months ago, strong pen pressure, the loops clean and confident, every letter connecting to the next with that distinctive tail on the capital L. I knew this hand. This was the woman who'd written grocery lists in cursive and signed my high school permission slips with a fountain pen. The September power of attorney, trembling lines. The L barely rose above the baseline. The loops collapsed. The pen had lifted between letters, leaving gaps where flow should be. This was not the hand of a woman who understood what she was signing. This was the hand of a woman who was told where to press down. I pulled up the calendar on my phone and checked the date. September 3rd. My stomach dropped. September 3rd was the exact same week Lorraine had been taken to the ER after a fall. I'd received a text from Diane, Gran took a tumble. Nothing serious. She's resting. I'd thought nothing of it. But the discharge summary, which I found buried in the mail pile, noted, patient disoriented. Intermittent confusion. Recommend neurological follow-up. They'd had her sign a power of attorney during the same week she'd been hospitalized for confusion. I took photos of everything. Then I called Ruth. Ruth came to the house on Friday. Not her office. The house. She said it mattered that we do this at Lorraine's kitchen table. I understood why the moment she laid everything out. The table was old maple, scratched from 50 years of Thanksgivings, stained with coffee rings that Lorraine had always said gave it character. Now it held 5 documents in a row, edges aligned like evidence at a hearing. The trust deed. The real power of attorney. Dr. Mercer's capacity evaluation. The forged September power of attorney. The illegal listing agreement. Ruth stood across from me, hands flat on the table. The house has been in the trust for over a year, she said. Your grandmother cannot sell it as an individual. The September power of attorney, even if it were valid, doesn't grant authority over trust assets. And it almost certainly isn't valid, given the medical record. She looked at me. This sale cannot close. The house was never theirs to sell. I stared at the documents. At the 2 signatures side by side. One strong, one trembling. At the physician's letter that drew a hard legal line between the woman Lorraine was and the woman they'd taken advantage of. She won't remember the house by Christmas. Diane's voice echoed in my head. But Lorraine had remembered. She'd remembered before any of them. Ruth and I made a plan. Quiet, methodical. The kind of plan built on paper, not anger. Step 1, we needed a current capacity evaluation for Lorraine, something a court would accept to confirm that the September POA was signed when she lacked the mental ability to understand it. That meant contacting Dr. Mercer's office and scheduling a formal neurocognitive assessment. I called Monday morning. The receptionist put me on hold for 11 minutes. When she came back, her voice had a careful, practiced quality I recognized from my own work. The tone people use when they're about to deliver bad news wrapped in protocol. I'm sorry, Ms. Caldwell, but we've received a request to restrict access to Mrs. Caldwell's medical records. I gripped the phone. Restrict access from whom? I can't disclose that. But I can tell you the request came in approximately 6 weeks ago, and it specifies that medical records and evaluation results are not to be released to anyone other than the designated family contact. And who is the designated family contact? Pause. Gregory Caldwell. My father. They'd locked me out of her medical records. I sat in my car in the clinic parking lot and pressed my forehead against the steering wheel. 6 weeks ago. That was mid-September. Right after they'd had her sign the power of attorney. They hadn't just gotten her to sign. They'd built a wall around her. I called Ruth. They restricted her records. Expected. Ruth didn't sound surprised. We'll file a HIPAA authorization under the durable POA. Your POA predates theirs and names you as healthcare agent. The clinic is legally obligated to honor it. I'll send the paperwork today. 2 days later, I had the records. Dr. Mercer agreed to perform a current evaluation. The system works, I told myself slowly, but it works. Diane came to the house on a Thursday evening. She didn't bring flowers, or food, or any of the things you'd bring if you were visiting your sick mother-in-law. She brought a glossy brochure. Maple Glen Assisted Living. She spread it on the kitchen table. The same table where Ruth and I had laid out the documents 3 days earlier. It's a beautiful facility, Nora. Private rooms, a garden, activities every afternoon. Gran doesn't want to leave her house. Gran doesn't know what she wants. Diane smoothed the brochure with both palms. Your father and I have been looking into this for weeks. If we transition her before Thanksgiving, we can have the house staged and listed by December 1st. I looked at her. She was wearing her church pearls and the cashmere scarf she'd bought in Aspen. You're staging the house for the buyer you already have, I said. Diane's expression flickered. Just a flash. The briefest crack in the plaster. Nora, I know this is emotional for you. You've always been attached to this house. But your brother's company is in real trouble, and this family needs to pull together by selling a 79-year-old woman's home out from under her. After everything I've done for this family, her voice cracked. Real tears or performative ones? I couldn't tell. And after 32 years, I'd stopped trying. The papers are already with the title company, she said, her voice turning to steel. The closing is November 15th. This is happening, Nora. She left the brochure on the table and walked out. I almost walked away that night. It would have been easier. But if you've ever watched someone decide that an older person's worth came with an expiration date, you know exactly why I stayed. If this story is hitting close to home, type I see her in the comments, and subscribe so you're here for what happens at the closing table. Welcome back. If you listened to part 1, you know I was standing at the edge of a cliff. My family had secretly listed my grandmother's house for sale while her memory was fading, plotting to use the money to bail out my brother's failing business, but what they didn't know was that my grandmother had seen it coming. 14 months earlier, she had legally placed the house into a trust and made me the sole trustee. I had exactly 9 days until the closing on November 15th, 9 days to stop a $680,000 theft. I sat in Ruth Adler's conference room the next morning as she laid out our options. Option 1, Ruth said, we file an emergency petition with the probate court to block the sale. It would work. But it would be public, slow, and expensive. And it gives Aaron and Diane time to scramble. Time to move Lorraine into a facility. Time to muddy the water. And option 2? I asked. Let the closing happen. Walk in with the original documents. Let the truth do what truth does when it meets paperwork that can't withstand it. Ruth took off her glasses. If you show up at the closing with the recorded trust deed and the capacity evidence, the title company will do the work for you. They cannot insure a title that is in dispute. No title officer with a brain will record a deed they know is legally defective. This is the quieter path. No courtroom. Just documents on a table, in front of witnesses. I thought about Lorraine's handwritten note when they come for the house. She hadn't told me to go to court. She'd given me a folder. Let the documents talk, Ruth said. 9 days. I went home and started counting. Day 1. I sat in my car outside the Briarwood Municipal Building and dialed the state elder abuse hotline. The intake worker was patient, precise, and completely unsurprised. I gave her the facts: a 79-year-old woman with documented dementia. A power of attorney signed during a week of hospitalization. A son profiting. A daughter-in-law directing. We'll assign an investigator, the worker said. I asked her to flag it as time-sensitive, mentioning the closing date. An hour later, I got a call from Ruth. Nora, something interesting came up. Adult Protective Services told me informally that yours isn't the first report they've received. Someone filed an anonymous complaint 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks ago. Right around the time they had forced Lorraine to sign their fake power of attorney. Someone else had seen what was happening. I didn't know who. But it meant the system was already building a case. Day 4. My father came alone. He pulled into the driveway in his 10-year-old Buick, the car he used for errands, the one nobody would notice. I watched from the kitchen window. His shoulders were hunched. He looked smaller than I remembered. He came in through the back door. He didn't acknowledge me at first. He just stood in the kitchen and looked around at the cabinets his mother had refinished herself. She used to sing in this kitchen, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Patsy Cline. Every Sunday morning. He sat at the maple table. He put his hands flat on the surface, and I saw them shake. I know what you think of me, he said. I waited. I didn't want this. Aaron's in over his head. Diane says the house is the only way. Mom wouldn't want Aaron to lose everything. You could still stop this, Dad, I said quietly. He looked at me for one awful, trembling second. I saw the little boy who had grown up in this kitchen. But then his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. Diane. He stood up. I should go. He left through the back door without even going into the living room to say hello to his mother. Day 5. I bought a cake. Not a fancy one. A 6-inch round from the bakery on Elm Street. Vanilla with buttercream, because that's what she loved. I set it on the kitchen table at 3 o'clock with 2 plates and 1 single candle. Gran, come sit. She shuffled in from the living room, her reading glasses on top of her head. She saw the cake and stopped. Whose birthday? Yours. We're doing it over. She sat down. I lit the candle. Make a wish, I said. She closed her eyes and blew the candle out on the first try. What did you wish for? I asked. She looked at me with those clear creek eyes. I wished you'd stay. We ate cake with forks this time. She told me the kitchen table came from her mother's house in Bridgeport, carried in on the back of a pickup truck in 1974. She said every scratch on its surface was a Thanksgiving she'd won. Then she put her fork down, leaned toward me, and whispered, "Don't let them take the table." I won't, Gran. The table stays. Day 6. The flying monkeys attacked. The phone calls started rolling in. My Aunt Caroline called first, her voice dripping with fake concern, saying Diane told her I was manipulating Gran's finances. Then a woman from the parish council. Then Aaron's business partner. Diane had done what Diane did best. She had spun the narrative before I had a chance to speak. Nora is overstepping. Nora is emotional. I didn't counter it. I didn't post on Facebook. The documents would speak for me. But at 9 p.m., my phone rang one more time. Aunt June. Lorraine's younger sister. 81 years old and sharp as a tack. Nora, her voice was dry and clear. I don't believe a word Diane is saying. Your grandmother called me last August. She said she was putting the house in order while she still could. She told me, if anything happens, back Nora up. Aunt June paused. I'm backing you up. Whatever you need. Day 7. Ruth made an off-the-record call to the title company and learned something massive. The escrow officer, Linda Yates, had actually flagged the file 3 weeks ago. She had noticed the house was in a trust. But Aaron's real estate agent, Brenda Voss, had lied. Brenda submitted an affidavit claiming the trust had been dissolved. The deal was already standing on cracked ice. All it needed was someone to slam a hammer down. Day 8. The night before the closing. I sat with Lorraine in the living room. She was working on a crossword puzzle, filling in the squares with a ballpoint pen. 7 across, she muttered. Legal instrument of protection. 5 letters. I smiled. Trust. She wrote it in. Smarty pants. She put the crossword down and looked at me. You're staying? I'm staying. She reached into her cardigan pocket and pulled out her reading glasses case. From inside, she took a folded piece of paper and handed it to me. It was a note, written in her shaky, recent handwriting, for Nora, the keeper of the table. Below it was her signature. Trembling, but intentional. A woman at the edge of the window, leaving one last mark. I'm not gone yet, she said. I folded the note into my wallet. In the morning, the folder, the note, and I would go to the closing together. Capital Title Services occupied a single-story brick building on Main Street. I parked across the street at 1:45 p.m. Ruth pulled in beside me. We walked in together. Ruth carried her leather briefcase. I carried the manila folder. Conference room B was small. 10 chairs around an oval table. Linda Yates, the escrow officer, was arranging documents in neat stacks. She looked up when we entered. Ms. Adler, Linda said, recognizing Ruth. I didn't see your firm listed on this transaction. I represent the Lorraine Caldwell Revocable Living Trust, Ruth said smoothly. We have documents relevant to this closing. Linda Yates's pen stopped moving. Before she could respond, the door opened behind us. Diane came in first. Cashmere blazer. Church pearls. Her smile was already in position, the gracious hostess arriving at her own party. Aaron followed, wearing a tailored sport coat, a leather portfolio under his arm. Gregory trailed them, looking at the floor. Behind them came Brenda Voss, the realtor, carrying a stack of closing documents. And finally, Daniel, the buyer's representative. Diane saw me and stopped dead in her tracks. Her eyes darted from me, to Ruth, to the manila folder in my hands. Her smile didn't change, but the muscles underneath it completely froze. Nora, she said tightly. What are you doing here? Taking a seat, I said. I sat down at the table. Ruth sat beside me. I placed the manila folder in front of me. And I waited. The room was painfully quiet. Linda Yates looked at Ruth. You said you have documents. I do. Ruth opened her briefcase and laid 3 items on the table, one at a time, exactly like a prosecutor laying out evidence. First, a certified copy of the recorded trust deed. Recorded with the town clerk on August 12th of last year. It transfers the property into the Lorraine Caldwell Revocable Living Trust. Ms. Caldwell, Ruth nodded toward me, is the successor trustee. Diane's smile finally fell. Not all at once, but in stages, like a building collapsing. Second, Ruth continued. The durable power of attorney naming Nora as Lorraine's agent. Executed August 9th of last year. Notarized. Witnessed. Aaron leaned forward, his face flushed. We have a more recent power of attorney that supersedes. Third, Ruth interrupted smoothly, placing the physician's letter on the table. A capacity evaluation by Dr. Helen Mercer, dated August 9, confirming Lorraine had full capacity when she signed these documents. I also have Dr. Mercer's current evaluation from last week, confirming Lorraine now lacks capacity. Meaning the September power of attorney your family obtained was signed without the legal competence required to make it binding. The room went dead still. Linda Yates picked up our trust deed. She read it. She compared it to the title report in her file. Then she slowly looked up at Aaron's realtor. Ms. Voss, you informed me the trust had been dissolved. Brenda Voss's face went sheet white. I was told. The trust was never dissolved, Ruth said coldly. The recorded deed confirms it. This property belongs to the trust. The sale cannot proceed. Linda Yates set the documents down, squared her shoulders, and said the 5 words that ended the war. I cannot close this transaction. Daniel, the cash buyer, simply closed his portfolio. Brenda Voss stared at the table in sheer terror. Aaron gripped the armrests of his chair until his knuckles turned white. And Diane looked at me like I had pulled the earth out from under her feet. The silence lasted 4 seconds. Then Diane exploded. This is ridiculous, she shrieked, standing up, her pearls swinging. Nora is a paralegal. She has no authority. My husband is Lorraine's only child, and he has a signed power of attorney. A power of attorney signed by a woman who was hospitalized for confusion that exact same week, Ruth fired back, her voice like a whip. A power of attorney that, even if valid, does not grant authority over assets held in a trust. You can't do this. Aaron stood up now, too. His voice was raw with panic. I have a $740,000 payment due in 6 weeks. If this deal falls through. Mr. Caldwell, your financial obligations are not this office's concern, Linda Yates cut in sharply. This is my grandmother's house, I said quietly. This is the trust's house, Ruth corrected. Administered by the trustee your grandmother appointed. Sitting right here. Aaron turned his rage on me. You're going to destroy this family. I looked up at him. I kept my voice at exactly the volume I had practiced. Conversational. Steady. Lethal. You tried to sell a 79-year-old woman's home while she sat alone in her kitchen eating birthday cake. You forced her to sign legal documents while she was disoriented in a hospital. You lied to a title company to commit real estate fraud. And you're telling me that I'm the one destroying this family? Aaron's mouth opened and closed like a dying fish. Diane was crying now. Loud, messy, theatrical sobs. After everything I've done. Gregory sat completely motionless. He stared at the trust deed. At his mother's confident signature from a year ago. I could see him doing the brutal math in his head. She had planned this. She had looked at her only son and decided he wasn't strong enough to protect her. Daniel, the buyer, stood up. I think we're done here. He walked out. Brenda Voss practically sprinted after him, desperate to escape liability. For the record, Ruth announced to my weeping mother and shaking brother, an Adult Protective Services investigation into the financial exploitation of Lorraine Caldwell is currently active. Any further attempts to sell or transfer trust property will be treated as a criminal matter. Diane stopped crying. She stared at me, the tears wet on her cheeks, her expression hardening into pure venom. You'll regret this, she hissed. When Aaron loses his company, when your father has nowhere to turn, when this family falls apart, you will remember that you did this. I stood up. I picked up my manila folder and placed it in my bag. I looked at the cashmere, the pearls, the fake tears she deployed like weapons. You don't get to decide what she's worth, I said. I thanked the title officer and walked out of the room. The cold November air hit my face, and for the first time in 9 days, I remembered how to breathe. I drove back to Oakwood Lane. The house was still there. The porch light was on. I went inside and found my grandmother asleep in her recliner, the crossword in her lap. I knelt beside her chair and tucked the quilt around her shoulders. "It's done, Gran," I whispered. "The house is safe." She stirred. Her thin hand found mine. Her eyes fluttered open. "Nora, did you keep the table?" I let out a laugh, a real one, coming from somewhere deep inside my chest. "I kept the table." She smiled. "Good girl." She closed her eyes and went back to sleep. Here is what happened after. Aaron's balloon payment came due 8 weeks later, right on schedule. He missed it. The bank foreclosed on his projects, and Aaron Caldwell Properties filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy in January. He had to sell the luxury German sedan. Last I heard, he's working as a project manager for someone else, making a fraction of his old salary. He never called to apologize. Diane's social standing fractured. Reputations erode slowly in small towns, but Aunt June talked. The title officer documented the fraud. The church group chat went completely silent whenever Diane posted. By spring, the shame was too much. She and Gregory sold their house and moved to a small condo the next town over. My father emailed me once in March. 3 pathetic sentences. "I should have done more. I know that now. I'm sorry." I read it twice. I didn't reply. Some apologies are just a record of what a coward knows they should have done. Adult Protective Services substantiated my complaint. The court formally voided Aaron and Diane's fake power of attorney. A judge appointed me as Lorraine's permanent legal guardian. I deferred my bar exam. I took a leave of absence from the law firm. I moved into the guest room with the crack in the ceiling, and I became the person who made sure Lorraine ate dinner, took her medication, and sat on the porch when the afternoon light was just right. It wasn't the career step I'd planned. But it was the only one that mattered. On a Tuesday in April, I baked a cake. Vanilla with buttercream. I set it on the maple table. Lorraine came in from the living room. "Whose birthday?" "Nobody's. It's Tuesday. We're having cake because it's Tuesday." She sat down. She took a bite and closed her eyes. "This is my recipe," she said happily. "It is good." She took another bite. "Don't change it." We ate in the kitchen while the crystal prism in the window threw small rainbows across the floor. The table held. A person's worth doesn't expire just because their memory does. And sometimes, the quietest love in a family is the only one keeping watch. That's my story. 1 empty birthday party, 1 manila folder, and a grandmother who remembered first. If this story reminded you to check on the elderly people in your life, do it today. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.